So, hello everyone, my name is Jonas and welcome to the second part that I promised. And in this video today, we're going to have a look at the tier list that I made of every single tier 10 tank ranked according to their changes and how strong they will be in the upcoming meta. So, let's start things off with the Z tier being probably the almost overpowered tier. And in that we have E100 first. As I said in the previous video, it's getting its DPM buffed on the 128mm. It is probably the strongest super heavy right now. It even has a decent mobility for a super heavy, decent armor, although it's not perfect ever since calibrated shells allowed anyone to have crazy high good penetration numbers. But still, I think this is probably the strongest heavy thing that you can play right now, just thanks to its DPM, the HP pool, and the armor. Moving on, E50M. Again, strongest medium tank, good DPM, or great DPM actually, good armor, reactive armor, decent penetration, and yeah, it's basically the perfect brawling medium tank if you want to go for that. Moving on, CS63, probably the best overall medium tank, and if you are better at medium tanks, this could be probably better, but it all depends. As I said, probably for an average player this is going to be better. But CS63 offers good DPM, great mobility, which has been buffed, good consumables, and a good mechanic, and a great chassis to go along with it. So I think this is sort of like the perfect medium tank archetype if you want to go by that. The next tank on the list is WZ132, probably the best light tank. They're pretty tied up with T100, but I think this is slightly better if you know what you're doing on light tanks. It has, again, good DPM, good alpha damage, the highest range in the game, good mobility, basically overall a great package. So moving on to strong tier. In strong tier we have a couple of heavies that I think are going to be probably the best ones in the patch, and starting off, AMX MLE54. As I said in the previous video, good DPM. It is very mobile for its size and for its armor. It has good gun depression and has reactive armor, so expect this to be really overpowered when it's, or not overpowered, really strong when it comes to random games. 113 and 260, tanks that are pretty similar but kind of different. 113, as I said, has better DPM, it has better gun, and it has better penetration and slightly better armor. But 260 on the other hand has better mobility and slightly worse penetration, or not slightly, a lot less worse penetration, slightly worse DPM, and is slightly bigger and can brawl less effectively. But I would say that they're pretty tied up. I prefer 113 slightly more. Moving on, VZ55. VZ55 received the clip and they balanced it pretty well. I think it's pretty strong but not overpowered. It has 2700 DPM, decent mobility, good armor, basically anything that you would want from a clipper. Chieftain and Conqueror, pretty similar heavy tanks, both of them having great gun depression, decent turrets. Although Chieftain, you kind of want to play it as a flanking heavy tank with the mobility, try to go for the HESH shells, and Super Conqueror is much more forgiving and better for holding. So I would expect Super Conqueror to be sort of like the ranked staple because it has really low. Basically, anyone can perform on this tank. That's what I was trying to say. FE215B, really decent option. If you know what you're doing and you're really good, you can move this up in front of these two, but I would still say that Chieftain is slightly better and more flexible if you want to go that way. It has better gun than the Chieftain, doesn't sacrifice APCR for HESH, but it has slightly less penetration, but a bit more DPM, I think. Moving on, Object 777, decent option. I could probably move it to above average because we already have 113 and 113 kind of does better job than a 777, but I think it's still a solid option because it has higher alpha damage of 430. T100 LT, second strongest light tank in the game after the update. Good DPM, spotting mechanic, decent power to ratio, probably the best power to weight ratio and best mobility in the game. Although WZ has higher top speed. What I didn't mention is that you can probably perform more boosts with the 132 right now, thanks to the top speed. But yeah, that's the 100. If you are a mediocre or average player, this is probably the light tank for you. But if you know your stuff in light tanks, you probably want to go for the 132. Hori, probably the best TD that we have in the game right now. It has reactive armor, it has sandbag armor, it has great DPM, it has been buffed with 3400, I believe. It has the great AP shells, premium AP shells, that don't really drop off in damage. And yeah, overall a great package. The only thing that's kind of stopping it is the platform, as I said. Gorilla, really good sniping option. Doesn't really require much skill if you want to play it at a base level. If you're really good, you know how to reposition. You're getting buffed next patch because the speed is getting buffed. So yeah, if you're a good player, better for you. If you're a bad player, you will benefit slightly. Foch 155 is getting buffed to its, I think, the auto-loading gun. It's moving from 500 alpha to 560, which means you will do 1200 in a clip, far more, because as well you have tungsten. I think this is a really good option, and it's getting its armor buffed as well. The armor was really lackluster, so now it's honestly moving really close to the OP territory, but I'm just going to keep it like this as a prediction. 140 Leo, both have been kind of hit, but I like to call them power shifts. 140 has gotten its DPM reduced by 100, but the alpha is coming back, the 310 alpha instead of 300, and the gun is becoming more accurate. I think this is overall a buff. And yeah, it's probably the best Russian medium tank option right now in the game after the update. Leo, the DPM has been nerfed by pretty significantly, by 250 I think, and the gun depression has been nerfed by 1 degree, although it's getting the concealment mechanic and gear oil, which I think benefit the tank really well because it fits the playstyle, and I think more so than a nerf, I would like to call this a power shift, and I think it's not all doom and gloom for Leo. Rinoceronte, still a pretty decent option, although the tanks above it are just simply better. But I like the clip, I like the mobility, I like the armor. It's basically what E5 wishes to be, a pretty overall great heavy tank. Vickers, our third strongest light tank on the list. If you know how to play light tanks and you're really proficient at light tanks, this is going to be really good, because all that Vickers requires right now is to find good flanks because of the premium shell changes they've given it hash. So right now, if you can find good flanking positions and you can reposition quite well, you will be able to utilize this tank. E6, solid option. There's nothing much more to say. It has not changed that much. The cupola has been buffed, otherwise it's still the same tank. Solid option, although it's not really a heavy tank, and I think all the heavy tanks have a buff kind of overperform it, but it's still a decent option. Same goes for Kampfpanzer. Kampfpanzer hasn't really been touched that much, so yeah, it's still the same tank, still pretty decently strong, although E50M is just that tad bit better. Moving to above average. We have IS-4. IS-4 has received a pretty slight buffs to its DPM and top speed. They don't really change the fact that IS-4 is just like lost in its identity. I wish they could revert the changes that they did to it. I don't like the power shift into the fast DPM heavy. I don't think it fits that tank quite well. What I would like to see from them is changing the turret traverse, because the turret traverse is still stuck in the super heavy kind of levels, which is really bad if you're fighting anyone mobile, because they can just circle you and track you. 777, we talked about it, and now we have the duo of VKP and a mouse. They both get outperformed by E100, but they both have their strengths and their weaknesses. That's why I still kept them in above average. VKP will still be this hull down side-scraping menace that you all know and love. and Mouse will always be Mouse with decent DPM, decent armor, and a lot of HP. If you're good at Mouse, you can always make it work, but E100 is just better. Same goes for Kranwagen and Concept. We already have two better options. For holding, aka Kranwagen, you can play the Super Conqueror, which is arguably better. And for like the fast, supportive, hull down heavy, you can play Chieftain, which is better than the Concept. But they're still decent in their own right. BZ75. If it was up to me, I would move the tank up to strong, but I know that a lot of people don't like this tank and they can't seem to make it work. You really need to find your own playstyle and your own like positions with it where you can make it work. But if you can make it work, this tank is pretty strong for a heavy tank. Moving on, Batchat. I urge you to play the low alpha 4-shot. It's better. It has been buffed by a lot in its DPM. I think the DPM now is currently sitting at 3,200, which is really strong. The only thing that's really holding it back is, for once, the alpha. The alpha is really bad. It's 270 or 280, I'm not sure right now, but every other light tank in its tier kind of has better alpha, and having 270 at tier 10 just feels really bad. 270 feels really bad even at tier 8 currently. Yeah, GFT has been hit pretty significantly, although I don't think it's been that hard to push it out of the pub meta. I think it's still pretty decent in what it does. You can still sit hull down, you still have good pen, good gun, decent DPM. Yeah, nothing really much changing there, although you're going to be slightly less mobile. 121B and T22 have received interesting armor buffs. They're slightly stronger on their armor, with T22 also getting slight DPM buff, as well as the addition of tungsten shells. So T22 is probably the second strongest Russian medium tank right now. It still requires some testing. It could probably move even too strong, but we'll have to see how it goes. 121B, solid option. Nothing really much more to say to it. It's just basically a T54 on tier 10. Probably before the patch, third strongest medium tank. 907 is moving down to above average because they're touching up the DPM a bit, although they're making it more mobile. Which, yeah, it makes it kind of nice, but the DPM nerf hurts when T22 suddenly now has better DPM, and 140, we don't even talk about that. 140 is sitting at like 3,600. Progetto received also an interesting change. They have nerfed the DPM slightly, but they reverted the HP change, so now you're back at 2000 HP if you're running enhanced HP. The gun depression has been nerfed to 8 degrees, which is still decent, and the top speed has been nerfed. But I think either the accuracy or the gun handling got buffed. That's why I think the tank is still decent, or feels decent to play, and I wouldn't drop it. It's still probably the best auto-loading medium tank in the game. XM is decent, although I don't think it's really that good. They've given it ABCR shells as standard, which I am not that big of a fan of, because if you look at what XM will have to fight, we have things like E100s, M4s, and that will force you, if you run ABCR standard, that will force you to run or to switch to heat to be able to pen them even to their lower plates because of the angle, and ABCR not being able to really pen angled targets that well. Average section. We have E5, not really that much to say. Average heavy tank doesn't really do that much. Average DPM, average tip speed, average armor. For hull down options, we have better ones. 50B, the aim time changes are really bad, as I said previously. I don't really like it. I don't think it's really that good. So I will just keep it at average. The payoff for playing it really well is really minor compared to the other tanks, so you're far better off just sticking with stuff like Rhinoceronte or even the newly added VZ if you want to play clipping tanks. Type, same, pretty average if you run the gun depression thing, which I think you should. And yeah, that's about it. Average. I7 average as well. It's been pushed out of the meta by AMX M4. No real need to play it. 263 as well, pretty average. Same as the 50B. The payoff for playing it well is really minor compared to the other TDs like Hori or even Foch if you want to play the mobile frontline TDs. Sheridan has received pretty minor buffs. They haven't really done much to it, and every other light tank got buffed, so that's why I'm moving it down to average. I know that like average and below average players love it because Big Alpha go burr, but I don't think it's that good, and you probably should drop it off in favor of the other light tanks. Same goes for M48 Patton and M60. I don't think they're really that good. Those changes are not really that good either. I mean, they're nerfing the DPM, but adding sandbag, and one tank gets reactive and one tank gets speed boost, which I guess is decent, but yeah, I don't really like those tanks. They're too big, and if you want to play frontline, hold down medium tanks that act like heavies, you have far better options in terms of E50M. E4, same goes for E4. I think it has gotten only its view range nerfed and sandbag added. I don't think E4 really fits this meta quite well. I think if you want to play frontline TDs, as I said, you have far better options. GFT, Foch or Hori, not much there to it. 60 TP, Shadow of its former self, not really that good, it's just mediocre, doesn't offer that much. T57, same goes for T57. I mean, it's getting its top speed buffed, but that doesn't really change the fact that the DPM is kind of rubbish now, as compared to what it used to be, and you have far better options of clipping tanks. Caro has been hit pretty significantly. Now you only want to play it as a single shot because the DPM of second and third shot got nerfed. You have received gear oil, which will bump the top speed up to like 56, I think. And you have received the stabilization mechanic. Oh, same goes actually for the Progetto. Progetto also received the stabilization mechanic. That's why I think it's going to be really nice to play. But the Caro is just Progetto's worst brother. It has worse armor, arguably worse gun now, and yeah, it doesn't really offer that much. Moving on to below average, we have Stridswagen. Do I need to say more? This tank has really been left out of the meta. It doesn't offer anything. I don't think you should be actually playing it at all. I would probably move it into don't play, but it still has the DPM, so it's still decent. 1-1, they have reduced the DPM, but giving it reactive armor, even though you're already running tungsten. So I'd assume you would probably run or drop tungsten in favor of reactive, but then again, it doesn't really make sense because they nerfed the armor. I don't know, man. 1-1 just doesn't make sense to me. Same goes for 30B. 30B has been hit pretty significantly on its DPM. It's being reverted back to 3200, although you're getting Spalliner. I don't think it does much. Leo is just better again. 268, decent option, or it used to be a decent option for a TD, but now we kind of got better ones. I don't know. I don't really like the 268 right now. I don't think it's that good. Moving on to Badger, they nerfed the toxic turning speed, so you're probably not gonna be able to navigate like between heavy tanks. I think faster heavy tanks will be able to circle you now, not to mention medium tanks, as it should be, so justified. But my reasoning to why it is in below average is that the gun dispersion is really bad, and overall the meta doesn't really favor slow and sluggish TDs. Same goes for the Yak. The Yak has its superstructure buffed to, I think, 280 millimeters, but its DPM got nerfed and its HP count got nerfed by 150, which I think are big enough nerfs to push it out of meta into below average tier. FV4202, please do not play the Heshgun. The Heshgun is not that good. You should be playing the APCR heat gun, which is arguably better. And even then, the tank doesn't really offer that much. It's not really that good. CS63 is just better. Moving on into the bad category, E3 really bad tank, really bad CD. They're nerfing the DPM and I think the turn speed in favor of APCR pen, the premium pen. I don't think that's good. I don't think the tank's really good. Yo, same story for the Yo. They're nerfing the Yo for some reason. Its upper plate armor and the aim time are being hit, which I don't really understand. The tank's been really bad or mediocre for a long time. VK DPM nerf from 2600 to 2400 basically kills the tank. Yes, it can be still playable, but you have E100 running around, so you don't really need another super heavy. And these two are better as well. Minotauro has received an interesting DPM change. I don't think it really changes that much, although its alpha has been reduced from 490 to 470. It has received the shell reload boost and consumable. And this just proves to me that the developers don't really know how to play their own tanks, because Minotauro, what you want to do with it is that you don't really want to shoot anything apart from the first shell that you have loaded in the magazine, like your third shell that you load, because that's how you preserve the most DPM. And as well, on top of that, the lower plate is getting nerfed, which thank God, finally the Minotauro will have a reliable weak spot that you can pen it. TVP has received its alpha back, but not the interclip, so it's still it's still really bad. I think the DPM got nerfed as well from like 2800 to 2700, so they made it even worse for these 2-minute games that we have currently. D62A DPM has been reduced to 3100 from 3400, which is really bad. And on top of that, I think they gave it speed boost, but I don't think it really changes the things that much. If you want to play a Russian frontline medium tank, just play T22, or even go for the E50M. E50M is just that good. Same goes for STB. It just got outclassed by E50M. Doesn't really provide that much. The DPM has been nerfed to 3100. And I don't really think there is much point in playing it unless you really love the tank. And last of all, we're moving into the don't play section. And I really mean it when I say it. Don't play the Death Star. It has been nerfed again. It's really bad. Don't play the FV 4005, aka the shit barn. It's really bad. Don't play the 268 version 4. After they buffed everyone's penetration by the calibrated shells, you don't really want to play that tank. Even before that, it was really bad, so don't play it. Don't play the SB2. SB2 has been a really lackluster release. I don't really like it. I think it provides, or I think it provides nothing really to the table. Like, yes, you have the alpha and the HP, but you sacrifice the mobility and the armor. The armor doesn't really hold up against the other heavy options. And same goes for 5A. I'm still waiting for the day that they will tackle the biggest problem of 5A, and that's it was the HP count. They're buffing the HP count by 50. I think it should be more. And the second is the penetration. Having 300 heat pen at tier 10 just feels really bad. So yeah, that was the list. I'm just gonna scroll it so you can see all of it. That was the list. If you guys have any recommendations or any suggestions for this list, or any personal opinions, you can leave them down in the comments below. Otherwise, I'd like to thank you for watching, and leave a like or subscribe if you have joined the video. And I'm gonna see you probably on the stream, if you will come, when the patch drops. So yeah, thank you and bye bye.